If you've ever carried a wound so deep that even time refused to heal it, this story is your mirror. Because sometimes, the pain you curse today becomes the strength you'll thank tomorrow. In a forgotten village surrounded by endless dunes, where the sun scorched the earth and the wind whispered ancient prayers, lived a young man named Rahim. His life had once been full of laughter. He had a small home, a loving wife, and a father whose wisdom shaped his soul. But fate, as it often does, struck without warning. One night, a fierce sandstorm swept through the desert, swallowing homes, camels, and crops in its fury. When the winds finally calmed, Rahim's entire world lay buried beneath the sand. His wife was gone. His father's well, the very lifeline of their home, had dried up completely. 4 weeks, Rahim wandered through the ruins, silent and hollow. He stopped eating, stopped speaking, and sat each morning beside the cracked mouth of the old well, just staring into its emptiness. "Why me?" he would whisper into the wind, his voice trembling with disbelief. The villagers pitied him at first, but then they started to avoid him. They said he was cursed by fate. Others said he'd lost his mind. But Rahim wasn't mad. Was broken. Then one donna travala entered the village. An old man wrapped in a faded cloak, his eyes shimmering with the calm of someone who had seen the world. He watched Rahim for a long time, and then spoke softly. "The desert burns those who resist it, but it shapes those who walk with it. The same sun that blinds you can also make you shine." The word struck something deep inside Rahim. That night, he packed what little he had, a flask of water, a piece of bread, and his father's prayer. Bedzand walked out into the desert. He didn't know where he was going. All he knew was that staying still would destroy him, but moving forward might just save him. The desert was merciless. The days baked him alive. The nights froze him to the bone. Hunger clawed at his stomach, and thirst burned his throat. Many times he fell to his knees, ready to give up. But each time he remembered the traveler's words, "Walk with it." On the 7th day, he came across a wrecked caravan. It was looted and silent, except for a faint cry. A boy, no older than 10, sat beside his wounded father, covered in sand and fear. Rahim rushed forward, offering his last drops of water. The man's pulse was weak, his lips cracked. Without thinking, Rahim lifted him onto his back. He walked 4 miles, his legs trembling under the weight. The boy followed, weeping and praying. At dusk, they reached a distant oasis where a small tribe took them in. Rahim collapsed the moment they arrived. When he awoke the next morning, the man he'd carried was alive, breathing, grateful. The boy hugged Rahim and whispered, "You saved my father." Rahim smiled weakly, but his heart felt something it hadn't felt in a very long time. Purpose. Before leaving, the father said to him, "You carried me through the desert though you were half dead yourself. Never think you are weak. Rahim, pain is only life, preparing you for greatness." Rahim wept silently that night. The burden he thought was a punishment was shaping him into something unbreakable. Still, the journey tested him. He walked 4 weeks through shifting dunes, facing mirages that tempted him to turn back. Loneliness haunted his every step. And then, one moonless night, a violent storm rose from the horizon. Winds that howled like demons, sand lashed his face. The world disappeared in a blur of gold and black. Blinded, choking, Rahim stumbled, his body screaming for surrender. He was about to let the storm swallow him when a memory flashed in his mind. His father, years ago, teaching him how to find water. "Listen to the sand, my son," he had said. "Feel its rhythm. It will show you the way." In the chaos, Rahim pressed his ear to the ground. Beneath the roar of the wind, he felt it a faint, deep vibration. Following the feeling, he crawled on his hands and knees, trusting his father's ancient wisdom over the storm's fury. Hours later, exhausted and battered, he fell into a sheltered hollow behind a massive rock formation, safe from the storm's rage. He had survived. The storm that was meant to destroy him had instead taught him to listen. Days turned into weeks, and Rahim's journey became a meditation. He learned to read the stars, to find water where none seemed to exist, and to understand the language of the wind. The desert was no longer his enemy. It was his teacher. The pain of his loss never fully vanished, but it transformed. It became a compass, guiding him, giving him a strength he never knew he possessed. One evening, he saw the faint glow of a village on the horizon. As he drew closer, he saw people gathered around a dry well, their faces etched with despair. It was a scene he knew all too well. Their leader explained that their only water source had dried up, and they were preparing to abandon their homes. Rahim looked at the well, then at the desperate faces around him. He felt the familiar pang of his own past, but this time it wasn't followed by emptiness. It was followed by a quiet resolve. He spent the next day walking the land, feeling the ground, listening. He placed stones in a strange pattern that the villagers couldn't understand. On the third day, he pointed to a spot far from the old well. "Dig here," he said, his voice calm and certain. The villagers were skeptical. Dig in the barren ground. It was madness. But the elder seen the conviction in Rahim's eyes. Same eyes that had stared into the abyss in return convinced them to try. They dug all day, their hope fading with the setting sun. Just as they were about to give up, a boy shouted. The sand at the bottom of the pit was damp. Energized, they dug with renewed vigor. Soon, muddy water seeped through, and then a clear, steady stream began to flow. The village erupted in cheers. They danced, they cried, they drank the life-giving water. They surrounded Rahim, calling him a savior. A miracle worker. But Rahim just smiled. He looked at the new well, a symbol not of what was lost, but of what could be found. He realized the desert hadn't taken everything from him. It had taken his old life to give him a new one. The pain that had once buried him had now become the foundation upon which he built a new world, not just for himself, but for others. Rahim chose to stay. He taught the children how to read the desert's signs, and he helped the elders find new oases. The man who had lost everything became the man who gave everything. His own story, once a tale of tragedy, was now a legend whispered with reverence across the dunes. The story of the man who walked into the desert to die, but instead found a way to truly live. Your pain is not a curse. It's a crucible. It's the fire that burns away everything you thought you were, to reveal the person you were always meant to be. Like Rahim, you may feel lost in your own desert right now. But remember this. Walk with it. Listen to it. Let it shape you. Because the same storm that threatens to break you is also the one that will teach you how to fly. The wound you carry today is forging the strength you will wield tomorrow. Don't run from it. Your greatest power is waiting for you on the other side of your deepest pain. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire.